Welcome back. Another tabletop review. We've got a Grand Power. This is the new version of the Q100. I'll show you what's new and what's going on with this gun coming up next on GBGuns. So Grand Power, one of my favorite companies. We have an entire playlist on their stuff. Released their striker-fired Q100 some time ago. I did an article comparing it to the K100, showing you what's different, not just the fact that it's striker versus hammer, but also that the sight radius changes, some things like that. Now, one of the things that came about with these, yes, they do have rotating barrels, more on that later, was the trigger. So it was Grand Power's first striker-fired gun, and the trigger, well, didn't really have any feel, and as you can see, has quite a bit of over travel. Your reset way out there. And I wondered, because I know these folks well, why that kind of trigger? Because their hammerfire guns have really crisp, nice triggers to them, and this just seemed kind of squishy and sloppy, and so I didn't get it. In talking to Grand Power, I came to understand that that is deliberate, since you do have the blade safety in the middle there, but deliberately having some squish there so that in a defensive situation, just grabbing the trigger like that, slapping it if you will, you're not going to throw the gun off. You've got all that extra travel before your mashing of the trigger is going to cause dip. So it's intentional to kind of smooth things out. But still, that feel, that sound, didn't really catch on too much, so they went back to the drawing board and created this version. These are now imported by Global Ordnance, so no longer with Eagle Imports. There's a trigger lock. We have 3 magazines and a total of 4 different backstraps. For our manual, back behind here, we have different sights, front sight posts, and a tool to change them. We get our bore brush and manual. Comes with a guarantee. I always flip through the manuals. I know a lot of people ignore them, but I find them interesting to see what quality or image will be there in case this is your first gun. If you're curious about the Grand Power lineup, you can pause here and see all the specs. I'm not going to bother wasting your time reading those things. Nice clear color photos. Alright, let's get that out of the way and talk about the gun. So here it is, nice and beautiful. Notice right away one of the changes is the barrels are now melanited. So you have that rich black. It's a melanite-like finish versus the stainless. The stainless I think it looks good on the muzzle end. However, I have had experience with some rust on these hitting after a while. The main change that you see is the trigger is now a flat shoe. I'm going to drop the magazine. Ooh, it's a little sticky on that side. We can see we're clear. And to show you how this trigger is now, you have the dingus safety in the middle. As soon as that's flush, it breaks. Very crisp, very, very light. Reset is back out there, but it's at the wall, and it breaks again with just enough over travel once again to prevent from a slap throwing it off. But that is a very, very short pull. And the flat shoe, if you're curious about those versus curved, the reason why these are so popular is if you're pulling down at the bottom, you effectively have more leverage on the trigger mechanism, so your perceived trigger pull weight is less. Other updates to them, of course, we have different importer marks. No one's really too excited about that, but on the top we see we've got the Slovakian crest. I'll get the light on there for you. And one thing that I noticed right away was the CIP markings. CIP, if you're not familiar with it, is sort of like the SAMI for Europe. You can see it on the barrel there and on the slide. Another change is on these levers. They looked a little different. I was curious about them, so I asked, and these were stamped. These are MIM. MIM gets way more criticism than I think it deserves. For a lot of applications, such as slide stop releases, not a big deal. You might have noticed also that the controls are on both sides of the gun. We've got an ambidextrous magazine release. It's very stiff on this side. And an ambidextrous slide stop and release. Works as a stop, works as a release. Believe it or not, some manufacturers haven't been able to pull that off. So let's take a look at the gun with our normal way. We're starting up front, and before I get those crybabies, I film this with a camera at 90 degrees. I am not pointing the muzzle at my face. 0 slide to frame movement. Barrel's locked up tight in there and tight in there. No movement whatsoever. We have a little bit of a rounding to make insertion into a holster easier. Single Picatinny rail slot. We've got cogning serrations on the front that are vertical versus the angled at the rear. Serrations on the front of the trigger guard for those that like to put a support finger there. Horizontal serrations on the front strap, which is the way they should be. The gun is trying to move this way when you shoot, not side to side. So having them be horizontal helps resist that movement. And one of the things that turned me on to Grand Powers in the beginning is this is a 15+1 round gun, and I can get my whole hand on it. I couldn't do that with the Glock 19 and other designs like that. And part of it is this nice high radius, and then this flare at the bottom that allows my fingers to have somewhere to go. You can see we've got contouring here to shield the magazine release. A little bit of texturing. It's kind of it's not necessarily a very grippy texturing. The forward back straps we'll get to later. We see our striker indicator. No movement on the back. That is nice and tight. There's our 3-dot sight picture. And those rotating barrels. Next we'll field strip this and take a look inside the gun. So as I've shown in other videos, field stripping the Grand Power is a little more reminiscent of a PPK or a Makarov in that you're going to be pulling the slide up over the top of the back of the gun. First we check clear, then we pull down on these tabs on both sides using a finger to hook through the trigger guard to hold things in place. It's a little difficult. You gotta brace the butt of the pistol grip against something. I like to use my chest, but can't do that on camera here. So you hold in place, come back, up, over the top, and off. That's all there is to it. Nice and clean. We've got the initials, I don't know if you can see there, stamped onto the steel chassis. Those are the initials of the assembler of this individual gun. Pretty cool responsibility held there. We can see part of how Grand Power has avoided the torquing problems with these ambi slide stops by just having very broad levers. Our recoil assembly is captured, and on a polymer guide rod, it's a flat spring. This bit here is the bearing that the barrel rotates on. Drop our barrel out. Have to unlock it. Come on. The shipping oil that's on here is very good at creating some suction. Take a look inside. In fact, let me wipe out some of that shipping oil so we can get a better view. And we're back, and now it's a little easier to see. You can see how beautifully polished that feed ramp is. Look inside of our slide. We can see that all the excess has been cut out. No machining marks. Just the brass drag from the test fire. We've got our drop safety plunger there. All looks very nice and clean, as one would expect. And there is that awesome cam surface that does the rotating and locking. We'll check for chamber support. I already know the answer, but This has become a tradition on the channel here, using our nozzler match. The most consistent ammunition I've tested so far. Drop around in the chamber, and what we're looking at, for those of you new to this concept, is the brass supported all the way around? And if I zoom in a little bit, get the camera to focus on the right object, you can see it is completely supported, without a doubt, all the way up to the rim that is only left there for the extractor to be able to pull the round out. So nicely done. Now, reassembly can be, well, a little tricky to do on camera. As I showed you in my last Grand Power video, it's not that hard to do when on your chest. I drop the barrel in and watch the serial line up with the slide there, then rotate it to unlock, let it drop forward. Now we're going to pull down on those tabs again, line up our guide rod, and bring the thing, slide back over the top. Come on, find my spot. Once again, this is proving difficult to do on camera, and once again, I'll probably have to show you during the shooting impressions. Nope, just did it. So you see I brought it back until it came down on the rails and then let it go forward. We'll do a quick functions check. Works. The back straps on here I covered in previous video, the P1 video. If you want to check that, it's the same frame, same back strap sizes. So check out the Grand Power playlist to see how that goes. We'll get this out to the range soon and do our, of course, full test battery, full mag +1, the what's for dinner test with a variety of different loads, shoot it for some accuracy, and then give impressions. What I love about this slide and frame remaining the same is that means it fits my holster for the K100, so there's no need to search for a new holster for a new gun. Let me know what your thoughts are on the Q100. You can go and see our original impressions on this new model from our trip to visit Grand Power in Slovakia in the spring of 2019. That's also in the Grand Power playlist. Thanks for watching.